little while ago, I made myself a loaf of bread. It was delicious, but I had a very hard time cutting it because apparently every knife in my house has a smooth blade. That's really no good for cutting a good bread. And so I thought, I need a bread knife, but why go buy a bread knife for $12 when instead you can spend way more than that in supplies, electricity, and time making one yourself? So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to make myself a bread knife. It's going to be my first time making a serrated knife, but I didn't just want a bread knife. I wanted a knife that really just screamed bread. So we're gonna be using bread as the handle material. I'm gonna get some of that started before I even get going on the metal over here. I've got a 2-part epoxy resin, and I'm going to pour the 2 different parts into these cups, and then I'm going to mix them in a separate container. I'm going to put that container in the vacuum chamber to get rid of all of the gas bubbles. My fancy schmancy mixing and vacuuming container. The cups was just to measure that I had the same quantity. I could have also used a scale and just used this container, but I didn't. All right, hopefully that is as well mixed as I think it is. Now we're gonna throw it in the vacuum chamber and try and get rid of some bubbles. This is the general shape of the bread knife that I'm going to be making, so it's time to cut this shape out of metal. I moved the resin into a larger container because it was taking too long to degas, and I was hoping the bigger container would let me let it run longer. It would fill more without having to put the pressure back in, but it overflowed even the larger container. So this is gonna be interesting. I'm gonna hopefully still be able to get enough resin out of this. I can also just pour it from the big pot straight in. It just might be a little contaminated. So let's see if we can get our bread covered. Well, bread is definitely covered, but I also don't think it has absorbed much of the resin yet. It's mostly just empty, hollow bread with no resin in it. So even though it's gonna bubble up a lot, I gotta throw it back in the vacuum chamber like this to try and get some of the bubbles in the bread to come out. I'm just adding some weight to try and hold the toast under the resin a little bit. All right, we've got the metal bar resting on top of the toast. That should hold it down under the resin. And I'm going to be using one side, I'm going to be doing like one piece of the handle like that and the other piece of the handle like that. And so I should have plenty of space just like that. That is super ghetto, but it just might work. We've got the bread in the resin in the pressure pot. We're just gonna let that cure overnight. Now it's time to take our very rough cut knife blank over to the belt grinder and start shaping it more carefully. At first, trying to remove all of the metal, I was using a 40 grit belt, and then I moved to this one, a 120 grit belt, to do a little bit nicer, cleaner work. Now I've got the whole shape cut out. It feels really nice in my hand, so I'm going to move on to surface grinding it. All right, right now our kiln is getting really close to being at temperature, but when I put this in, it's going to drop the temperature down. I'm gonna have to open the door, and this is just gonna pull a bunch of heat out of the air, so the temperature's gonna drop. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put this in now. It's going to get up to 1950 degrees, and then it's gonna hold there for 20 minutes. After that, I'll take it out, press it down between these plates, and move on from there. Oh, that warp is bad. Now, I'm removing the foil, which is a process I should definitely be wearing leather gloves for because it's so sharp. Have not yet cut myself today on this, maybe somewhere. All right, that is a nice finish. Look at that, that's just the only spot that any oxidation happened. That is fantastic, look at that. So now we're going to throw this in liquid nitrogen and let it chill in there overnight. Now I haven't really done much pressure casting of resin before, and it had some interesting issues. Specifically, and this could be cold related, when I pulled it out after 24 hours, it was still kind of gummy. Like I could drive my thumbnail right down into the resin. And that's not what you want, but I figured it was just because it was in my garage and it was probably like 30 degrees in my garage. So I brought it inside and I actually took the whole thing and I put it in my oven at 175, as low as my oven will go, for like 45 minutes. Took it out, and when it cooled down from that, it had hardened just the way I want. So now I've got nice, fully cured resin surrounding my toast, and I think that will work just great for my handles. So now it is time to move on to starting to grind this blade into what I actually want it to look like. Got a few different things that I want to do as I grind this knife blade down. I'll probably put a little bit of a distal taper along the whole thing. What that means, as it goes from here to here, the blade will actually get narrower. And I don't need to do much of that, but it's just a little bit of a weight reduction. All right, I've got the primary grinds on both sides. I'll be honest, it didn't go exactly how I was expecting. I wasn't planning to grind all the way back to the spine, and I wish I could say that I was just like made a cool design choice and I wanted it to be lighter weight. And the truth is that as I was grinding, I kept accidentally getting spots that went too far back. And I'd try and grind a little farther and a little farther, and I kept doing it. I did it like 3 times, so I was like, I'll just go all the way to the back. In the end, it's still a style that I like. It still looks good, and it makes for a lighter weight knife overall, so maybe I should have done that from the beginning. I wasn't planning to, but I'm not upset that that's where I ended up. So now I've got both sides grinded. I'm going to do a little bit of a surface treatment using some Scotch-Brite belts, and then I'm going to get set up to put those scallops in, which I've never done before. I think it's about time to start putting a handle on this thing. So it's almost like toast is not an ideal material for making handles out of. The resin has not fully impregnated this bread. I've got some areas here that are just exposed toast. So I'm gonna have to find ways to fill those in nicely. I'm thinking a combination of super glue and epoxy. Before I start gluing these pieces onto the handle, I need to make sure that the fronts are completely finished, because once it's attached, I can't really sand and polish those. So I'm just gonna get those to where I want them, shaping them, polishing them, and then I'll drill the holes to put the pins on and attach the 2 bread handles. Now you can see they aren't perfectly symmetrical. Usually if I'm doing a knife, I have these attached together, bolted together as I do that shaping. But because the shape of them was determined by the piece of bread itself, they're not going to be 100% mirror image. All right, so now I need to drill holes here and here, but remember, they're not going all the way through. I'm not gonna have the pins visible on the other side. They're just gonna go in about maybe a little less than 1/4 of an inch. And I'm gonna do that on both sides, and then I'm gonna get some glue, glue it all together, and attach those. Once the glue is all cured, we can do the rest of the shaping of the handle to get it nice and comfortable in the hand, and clean it up to look really pretty. All right, we gotta give that time to cure, and we can shape it. Bring out all the bready goodness in that handle. Now we've got the 2 pieces of bread attached to the knife, but this handle is clunky and sharp and too big, and we need to trim it down to something much more usable. All right, the bread-handled bread knife works great. It cuts so much nicer than my smooth-bladed knives, which, you know, is why they have serrated blades. It's really fun. This is the first serrated blade I've made. I'm really happy with how well it turned out. It seems nice and sharp. It does the job of cutting the bread. Overall, I love the look of the bread handle. So when I say I have a bread knife, I mean it in 2 ways. And it's just, yeah, this is good. I can cut well, it's nicely balanced, it's, you know, funny to look at because it's got the real bread handles. Overall, this has been fun. Guys, if you have any other suggestions of types of knives you want to see me make, go ahead and let me know. And if it sounds fun, I can do it. Thank you to everyone for watching, but a special shout out to my Patreon supporters. Your support means the world to me, and it will allow me to do bigger, better, and cooler videos. If anyone else is interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link for that is down in the description, and we'll see you next time.